I've talked a lot on this channel about the importance of a record label having a niche or having a calling card of some sort. And I feel like you guys do that better than most labels I've seen. What do you think that is for your label? What do you think draws people to your releases?
Well, our label is more health and wellness based music for relaxation, meditation. Really, it's a form of escape as we see it. There are other labels out there that do this type of work, but I don't think there's a lot of them. And I think it's important for what we do. With COVID, this style of music really took off, and people started listening to it to help them relieve some stress.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. And I'll let Alina jump in here if she's got something to add to that.
Yeah, our statement is to put music for well-being, for relaxation, and for calm out there. And when we look for new artists to add to our roster, we also look for people who agree with that statement and who want to create music for well-being or for relaxation or just to bring goodness into the world. And whenever we are looking for new opportunities or for new people to join us or for new partners, that is kind of like our guiding principle is it going to bring wellness and just goodness out into the world? And from a lot of the feedback that we see from our listeners, from our fans, they find it really relaxing in their daily routine. They say that it helps them with stress or anxiety relief.
Wow.
And it's just wonderful to hear that it's actually helping people.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, music helps a lot of us regardless of the genre, but it's really interesting that you guys are setting out with that explicit goal. I mean, for a lot of people who make music, it's just an afterthought, or it just happens to be a byproduct of that. But it's really cool that you are actually thinking about that in the creative process. Is that true?
Yeah. And I think when we get submissions, both Alina and I take a listen to them, and it's about feeling for me anyways. Alina's a little bit more technical, and it's like, when you're listening to the music, does it relax you, or is there an element in the music that pulls you out of that relaxation state? If it does, that's probably not for us. And Alina can elaborate.
Yeah, definitely. I find that when we get submissions, a lot of time we do that test when we just listen through, and I often listen through while doing something specifically to see if if there's an element that pulls me out of the experience.
Yeah.
And if there's something that makes me feel more relaxed or more attentive. If it's uplifting, then we tend to take it on as well. But if it's meant to be relaxing, kind of comforting, it's supposed to put you in a comforting state, essentially. So while I'm doing something, if I'm listening to it and it puts me in a relaxed, concentrated, focused state where I'm feeling calm, then it's probably a good choice.
Yeah, no, that's great. Was that something, I'm going to ask you about the history of the label later on, but I want to know, was this something that was determined at the outset? Or is it something you kind of organically, found this niche through experimenting, or did you know specifically what type of music you wanted to release?
Well, I might just go into how the label started here. Because it started with my music, and people were letting me know. I just decided I wanted to do new age music because somebody had told me that had heard a previous recording that I had done. It was not my own music. It was more classical music. But they had told me they would put that CD on to help them relax. And there was a particular woman that, I'm not sure if she had Parkinson's or another disease, but her hands were shaking, and she told me that when she listened to my music, her hands would stop shaking. She could write, she could put her makeup on. So I thought, that's really, really powerful. So I wanted to start creating my own music. So the label started with just my music, and I'm a flutist.
Okay.
And as I was developing the label, I started doing promotions as well. There were some other artists here in the Phoenix area that I felt their music was very fitting to what I was doing, and I wanted to try to promote their music. And it just kind of grew from that. So at first, I would say I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go with the label and what I wanted to accomplish with it. So that developed definitely over the years.
So when you started with your own music, and that's a common thing that we do here with a lot of labels, is that the first is to self-release their own music. What inspired you to bring on other people? I mean, was it just that you had learned the ropes and you wanted to share your experiences, or was it that you had discovered an audience who had this enormous appetite for this type of music?
Yeah, overall, I just believe music can be used as a healing tool. So I wanted to expand upon that. I think it's just really important. And I do always say it doesn't have to be our style of music. It can be any style of music that resonates with the listener that can cause, relaxation and stress relief. Sorry.
No, that's okay. No. So I'm curious if what inspired you, like once your music is working, your music is finding an audience, what inspired you to bring on more artists like yourself?
Yeah, I felt it was really important to grow the genre.
Right.
And yeah, I guess there's a niche for that. New age music, as it's called. Yeah. It's a very, very small genre. Yeah. When you compare to all of the other genres out there. Jazz is also a very small genre.
Sure.
So, and it was, it's been really challenging along the way, but it's been such an experience and an honor to work with so many other artists who have the same vision.
Mm-hmm. There's so many angles I want to take this. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about, we spoke to another instrumental record label last year, and we talked about this a little bit, and I want to address it with you guys as well. I'm often curious how artists, and you maybe experience this yourself, deal with the fact that for a lot of your listeners, this music is a utility. And in fact, you mentioned it as a tool. And it's there to relax when you're getting a massage or for a lot of us decorating the Christmas tree or studying for an exam. So one might assume that the music isn't necessarily being appreciated for the art, or that the artist's work isn't being appreciated because it's being used as a tool or a utility. Is that something that your artists have to reconcile, or is it they're getting paid to do what they love, so do they care? But do you know what I mean? Do you understand that question?
Yes, I've been asked that before. Okay. Is it still art if you're creating it for a purpose?
Right.
I think it is. I think it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go into my process of how I record, but for me, I pretty much channel the music, and I do it as an improvisation. A lot of what I do, not everything, but so I believe there's a lot of emotion in there. Even if like somebody's hired me to record a song for them, it's like I have to put myself in a very creative space. I usually talk to the person to find out what's going on in their life and how my music might be able to help them, and then I create from that.
Right.
So I still think it's art, even though it's created for a purpose.
Yeah. No, and I think that there's, the more I think about this, and I was kind of thinking about it this morning, preparing for this, but the more I realize how it isn't, music as a whole isn't as simplistic as we often think it is, whether it's like just putting on a record and going to listen to it, or going to a show and going to listen to it. There's more, there's music that I listen to for nostalgic reasons, and that it reminds me of my youth, and it maybe makes me feel young for whatever reason, you know what I mean? Then there's music we listen to help us focus or to relax or to help us work out. And then oftentimes, like, I enjoy music because of the instruments or the production. So it isn't as black and white really as maybe we think it is. And I guess this is the realization I came to. Tell me if you think this is true, but I don't think there is a hierarchy. There isn't any sort of objective one way is better than the other. In a way, almost all music or all art is a utility in some way.
Yes, I would agree with that. And it's funny you were saying you listen to music for nostalgia. My husband listens to 80s music. Like
so do I.
And yeah, it serves a purpose. It takes you back, right?
Yeah.
To your memories that you have. I prefer to listen to newer music because I get bored easily.
Right.
But I do appreciate listening to nostalgic music as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I just heard Jerry Seinfeld was talking about why he buys old cars, and he says that they're like the only real time machines where you can actually get into it and you're taken back to the 50s or the 60s or whatever you're driving. And I feel that way with music, even if it's just the 90s or whatever it is. It takes me back to high school. It takes me back to Christmas morning, whatever it is. Right. Incredible feeling.
Right.
Let me ask you about streaming, because we were talking about this just a little bit at the beginning of the call. And I want to know how streaming has impacted your label, because it's impacted a lot of different labels. And I'm curious the role it plays for you guys, because it's something that, from what I've seen, you guys do really well. And I'd love to know how you strategize for it and how you maybe came into it and how your genre seems to be conducive for the types of listeners. And, just off before we were recording, I was saying to Alina that, when I was working in an office and I first had streaming, I used it as this way to explore all these other types of music that I normally wouldn't have spent $20 on a CD or even gone to a show. Tell me a little bit about how streaming has impacted your business.
I'll let Alina take this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So streaming is, because of the niche of our music and because of partially the function of our music and the place that it finds in the lives of our listeners, as you said, it can be utilitarian and it can be art. And we find that diversifying... Oh, let me go back. Let me say that the first goal that I have in mind when I'm working with an artist is to connect their music to people who will love it, right? So to create that personal connection. So streaming is part of the vehicle to get there. And for us, it means diversifying the streaming strategies and targeting multiple channels and targeting Spotify and working on playlisting there, targeting Pandora for certain releases and working on artist messages there, working on featuring tracks there, including shows that are going on there, and putting more effort towards those channels. It kind of depends from release to release how it fits within a particular channel or for a particular purpose, but we tend to listen through the release, see if it may have a certain leaning to success on a playlist, maybe on Spotify, whether it's peaceful piano for filled piano recordings, or if it's an ambient track, it may do better on Pandora. And we kind of tailor our approach to those platforms. And we work with our artists to make sure that they are getting as much visibility as their release can to facilitate that ultimate connection with the fan, which is what we're striving for.
There's something beautiful about, I've noticed this just as a fan of music and observing how people are operating in the business. And we know that there's a dark side to streaming. But I think the bright side of it is this democratization of that it can be for artists like yours who previously in a different industry maybe wouldn't have appealed to radio, traditional radio, or traditional touring and club scenes. And now who are making a living. And I think that's unbelievable to see, classical pianists or to see ambient producers or a Latin guitarist. And I've seen them and they're getting millions of streams. And I just think that's fantastic for them, who have been doing what they've doing, honing their craft for years. And then streaming has provided this, because there are some people who use these playlists for hotel lobbies or for, for spas. And now these guys can make a living. I just think that's really fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And we have many artists on the label that are not performers.
Wow.
That are able to, make money with their music now streaming.
Yeah. And that's fantastic, because we're seeing a lot in the music industry now about looking at the problems of touring, how it's not environmentally friendly, how it's just not making sense financially for anyone. And that's even in America. And here in Canada, you have to drive 6 hours between cities and so it's very difficult. But so to hear that streaming and different parts of the internet can enable people to stay at home, be with their family, save on expenses and still do their art. That's incredible. That's a dream come true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And many of them were doing live streams also.
Right. Oh, sure. Yeah.
So that helped gain fans that way.
Do you have... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, we're always encouraging our fans or our artists to reach out to fans in some way and do live streams, stay connected with them.
Right.
I think it's really important to have an email list.
When I went to your website, that was the first thing that popped up, and I love that, because I preach that too. I think that is so important, and it works so well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, social media is great, but I just went through a 45-day ordeal of losing my Facebook and Instagram account because I was hacked.
Oh.
So, yeah. So you have to have multiple ways to stay in contact.
Absolutely. And there are things that happen all the time. You get out of favor with the algorithms, and, billionaires buy other companies, and email seems to be, it's concrete. It's yours. That's your list. That's your spreadsheet. Yeah.
Yep.
No, I think that's so great. I went to your website. I think it was on my phone when I first went to your website, just preparing for this. Well, I had gone a couple months ago, but just a couple days ago, and this pop-up to join your mailing list came, and I was like, oh yes, you don't see this enough. Good for these guys. That's great. I'm a nerd when it comes to that type of stuff. Let me ask you we talked about the kind of the philosophical, emotional parameters of your artists. What about sonically? Are there sonic parameters? We talked about relaxation. I guess that can come in the form of I'm just curious. Are there limitations when it comes to rhythmic music, percussion, and that kind of stuff?
Well, we many people say our label still is kind of widespread because we do have ambient and acoustic and solo piano and chill and electronic. So those are subgenres of the new age genre. And we try to find placements for each of those subgenres with what we do. So as far as limitations, we don't want anything that sounds like on the rock side.
Right.
But I don't know if you listen to any of the chill stuff, you can hear percussion in those tracks for sure. Sure.
Yeah. Well, and I think when there's a small group of curators with you guys, that if it gives you that specific feeling that is intangible, then it works. And that's probably what your audience has come to trust you for.
And Alina, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, with our contacts with the partners that we work with, sometimes listening through a new release, it can be different. It can have percussive elements. We have a few releases with a drum set, and it's more of a uplifting groove feel. It just, for me, it goes back to the original statement, whether it works for well-being, is it uplifting, does it bring value to the listener. And if it does, then it's probably something that would be interesting to look at. But it also has to fit within the structure that we have in place to promote the release, to push the release to the radio programmers that we have contacts with. So if we get pitched a rock release or something, or I should say, if we get pitched a world release or something that we don't necessarily have a structure for, even though we might love to support it, we don't have the contacts or the structure to promote it further. And the artist might be well better somewhere else where they can actually support that type of music. If that makes sense.
That's really wise, because a lot of labels, when they hear something and they love it, they have a hard time saying no to it. I mean, all of us have a hard time saying no. Every entrepreneur has a hard time saying no. It's one of the things we have to train ourselves to do. But especially when you love an artist, you love their music. But for you to know, we have these distribution channels. If you don't fit one, then you're not going to be happy with us. We're not going to be able to serve you. That takes a lot to be able to say that.
Yeah, and we have artists on the label who work on different style projects that will bring them to us, wanting us to release them. And then we have to say, well, can't really do anything.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but
right.
We love the project. We just, it doesn't really fit with what we do.
So can you explain to me the business model a little bit when it comes to when you get a release from one of your artists, they deliver an album, what then? What are the channels that you have in place or that you look to send this to?
Sure. I'll let Alina run with this one.
Sure.
Sure thing. So when we get the release, we listen to it and we started jotting down ideas of what we think this release would be most successful for and what channels do we have in our arsenal that would really enjoy this release and that it would be a great fit for. And we tend to promote to a number of different outlets. We promote to radio, we promote to PR companies, we promote to partners and networks that use our type of music, like the Care Channel, which is a hospitality channel in hospitals that uses our music to help the patients relax and calm in a hospital setting.
Wow.
If the release fits, we will send it out to places like SiriusXM, Music Choice, and just venues that we think would connect the release to the people that would benefit the most from it.
Oh, that's really interesting. What role does physical media play? Is that something that your audience is interested in?
Well, we have some artists who want to release CDs. Mm-hmm. We've had a few that have released cassettes.
Oh, wow.
Honestly, physical sales are very low in comparison to other revenue streams. But if they want to go ahead and have those manufactured, we're happy to set up distribution.
Right.
For them.
Yeah, and I think that's, to me, there's labels out there who are the opposite of you. They do not have the digital channels that you have. For radio or for streaming, but they do when it comes to record stores, and they have, the fans. And I think it's important for labels not to start a label and to assume they're going to do everything. They're going to do vinyl, CDs, tapes, and radio, and hospitals, and streaming platforms. It must take a while to kind of hone in on where your audience is and where they like to enjoy music.
Yeah, for us, we mostly just release digitally these days.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of requests for vinyl, but very, very minimally. So it's just not worth putting the money into that, investing in the vinyl, because I don't think we'd really sell it for our genre.
Yeah. No, I get that. Tell me then, I think that this was mentioned off air. So let's talk about it again, about just how prolific you guys are. How often, it sounds like a lot to me. And I mean, more than one record a year is enough for me. So tell me how many you guys are working on at a time.
Typically we have 2 to 3 releases every Friday. Those can be singles, EPs, or albums.
Wow.
We've built a team. So we have help with the playlist pitching. We have admin help. We have social media help. And
that's incredible.
So we couldn't do it without the team.
Yeah. Okay, that's incredible. I mean, man, 1 to 2 a week is but I mean, I guess when you have this distribution channel and of course the team as well, like how much that channel can handle. And if people are receiving this amount of releases, or if they only accept 1 of every 10 that you pitch, I guess it becomes a numbers game. You know how much they can handle without overwhelming your channels. Is that true?
Well, also, like we wouldn't want to have 2 piano releases on the same day, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe an acoustic guitar and a chill release. So we can push those out to our different channels without overwhelming our contacts.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. You probably have a better idea of your competition, quote unquote, which is a terrible word in this industry, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of labels like you out there.
There is another large one. Do you want me to name them?
No. I'm just, I guess what I'm kind of, no, we don't want to promote them. No, I mean, sure there is. I imagine there's other companies too that kind of go down this path, but as an indie record label, and I'm sure there are other companies and majors who kind of dabble in this space as well, but I just think it's beautiful to see an indie label run by real people and real musicians who started in this genre. That to me is really unique. And like I said at the beginning of the episode, it's very unique for me to see a label with such a narrow focus in a good way. Such a clear focus would be a better word to use, is to say, this is what we're doing, the path, because any entrepreneur is so easily distracted by shiny things and, this is a pop release. We could find the next Taylor Swift if we work with this artist, but for you to really keep those blinders on, that's got to be challenging almost.
In the beginning, I was taking different projects on, and some of the ones that were outside of the new age genre, they didn't do so well. So that helped me to learn to just focus and do what I do.
Sure. I've used the term instrumental. I don't. What is the kind of the overarching term? You're mentioning new age, and I remember that term, from the Enya days, when that was mainstream. This must be a struggle for you. I know a lot of the neoclassical labels are struggling with the term, because I think if you say new age, that might scare some people. And then if you say classical, that scares people too, because they think, oh no, that's, a certain type of music. So is that a challenge? Is talking about labels?
Yes. There's been discussions for years about the new age tag.
Sure. Yeah.
Because people think of crystals and mysticism and everything. And actually the Grammys just changed the name this year.
Did they?
Of the new age category to new age ambient and chant, which is kind of odd because ambient and chant already fell under new age.
Okay. Interesting.
But I think relaxing instrumentals probably describes it best.
That's a great term. And the label or genres, and we had an author on and we talked about this a couple months ago, but it is such a silly thing because some of them refer to the type of the people who are making it or the culture who are making this music. Some of it refer to the geography, some of it refer to the instruments, and now Spotify's messing everything up by saying this is road trip music or this is study music or it's such a terrible position for all of us to be in to have to use words.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alina, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I find myself also with the same question, and I oftentimes will tend towards using more descriptive adjectives like ambient, atmospheric, or soundscapes, like that more accurately captures the sound of the release rather than attaching it to the genre when I'm pitching especially. to kind of get the feeling of the music across, but the relaxing instrumentals is the best way to describe what we do and what unifies our sound, I think. So I go back to that, and I go back to our mission statement again. So that is basically the way I approach it.
Yeah, and some DSPs, they don't use the term new age. Like when we're setting up new releases, it's like, what category do we put this under? So that's a challenge because you can't pick new age.
Well,
it's got to be ambient or...
You're right. And some of the DSPs will just pick it themselves. They listen to it, or the computer listens to it, and they have their own. And it's not till release day where you see what they've called it, and you're like, oh, I didn't know that was a genre.
Yeah, some of our groove and chill releases will pop up under electronic dance.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. I find that kind of stuff so interesting, especially the genre of world music, which is no longer a term we're really using, because it was always this thing where Westerners were hearing instruments that they didn't recognize. And then world is ridiculous because it's basically saying anything that's not British or American is part of the world, And so, but I mean, for me as a music fan, growing up with 80s music and growing up with rock and pop, when you hear instruments that you haven't heard before, or versions of a type of flute that you haven't heard before, that's really exciting. As a music fan, as a musician, to hear the rhythms that come out of something that isn't a drum kit, that kind of stuff really gets me excited. And I love to hear that. And you oftentimes have to look at world music or new jazz or new age to find that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you again about the history. Can you just tell me the beginnings of how far do we go back to when you were a independent artist and recording your own music? When did you give it a name, and when did you say, okay, we're now going to bring on other artists and make this official?
Yeah. So it started with my own music in 2009.
Okay.
And I did a collaboration with a guitarist named Darren Mahoney in 2013. We hired a promoter. The music got out there. Things started to happen. And then I was like, oh, I saw what they did. I can do that too. Yeah. So then I started doing the promotion. So it was really 2015 when I decided, okay, I'm going to see if I can make something happen with this label. Wow. And I started taking on other artists. So it's been 7 years of really, really hard work. I told myself and my husband, I said, okay, I'm going to give this 5 years. I'm going to work my butt off for 5 years and see what happens.
Yeah.
And I did. I would work 12 to 15 hours a day.
Wow.
And, 5 years came right about COVID time. And I was like, okay, now what do I do? Do I keep going? Do I stop? And I'm like, I need a team because I cannot continue to work at the pace that I've been working. So I built the team. It was like the best thing I could have done.
And explain to me how COVID excited things for this music.
Artists were home. They weren't out performing anymore. They were home and recording. And like many artists reached out to us to either release on the label or work with me with the promotions company to get their music out there. There was just such an inundation of music being recorded during that time.
Yeah.
So that actually helped us grow. As everybody was probably very concerned when COVID hit, I was like, oh, okay, how is this going to affect my business and my label?
Yeah, of course.
And it actually grew. Yeah.
Wow.
I know, it was very surprising, but I was like, oh, okay. So something good happened for us out of, this terrible situation.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you hoping for another pandemic or another recession or something?
No, no,
some more
no.
anxiety in the world. That's what we need.
Yeah,
Trying to work opposite of that.
we're trying to relax everybody.
Yeah.
But no, we are busy enough now that no, we don't need another pandemic. We do have a large catalog to help people if it does
happen again. Yeah. That's great. Without giving away any spoilers, what are your plans for the future with the label? So you've made it past this 5-year mark. You hired people, and now you're in a full swing. So what are the hopes and the dreams moving forward for you guys?
For me, I would like to continue to grow the label. I still think we have a lot of areas we haven't penetrated yet with our music where it can be very effective. We're also trying to narrow our focus a little bit on artists that we bring on. Always looking for, I suppose when we first started working with artists, we didn't really look that deeply into who the person was.
Oh, okay, sure.
And so we had some things happen, and we just released them from the label. So we make sure the artists have good character. That they are also actively promoting their music, because I find that it just works better if this is a team effort. We provide them with a lot of support. Alina meets with each artist for each release and discusses strategy and what they can do on their end to help promote their music. So it's really, I've called this my family for a long time. So I feel like everybody I bring on as an artist becomes part of my family.
Yeah. No, that's some really good advice. I was just jotting that down because I want to share that with our community, just about the type of artists that you bring on, and not just sonically, although that is important as well, but their personality and their character and how they get on with the label. And do you have cross work with artists? Are your artists working together, or is there some way for all of your artists to kind of meet up? Do you have a family Thanksgiving dinner?
I wish. In the earlier days, I did have a couple of meetups, but then COVID hit, of course. Sure. But we do have a big event planned for October 2023, which is called Rejaminate. Okay. And it's a health and wellness retreat in Mexico, just south of Cancun. Wow. So it's music-based. So we have 7 or 8 artists from the label that are going to be there playing throughout the day, like yoga on the beach with live music and rooftop concerts at night. So that will be the big hang for 2023.
That's awesome.
So it's not just our artists, it's open to anybody who wants to come and attend.
Wow. That's incredible. And then you were talking about when you look at growth and looking at more areas to send your music to, what's the plan for that? I mean, there's got to be, when I think of this music, I really do think of endless opportunities. Do you guys work with sync at all? Is that something that is on your radar?
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes, we really started to focus more on that this year, and that is our big focus for 2023.
Oh, great.
There are some sync events that we are attending. We are working with a new distributor very soon, who we believe will help us with that as well.
That's great.
Yeah, and I think we seek licensing opportunities also. There are direct licensing opportunities out there to be had that have worked well for us financially. Yeah. So always looking for those opportunities as well, and try to get our artists on larger editorial playlists.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, those are incredible. I mean, I've seen, you mentioned the Peaceful Piano one. I'm a member of that playlist on Spotify. I love it. And I wish I could play piano because I would do everything I can just to get on that playlist. Just so I could afford to go to a retreat in Mexico if I got on that playlist. You know what? I love, not a lot of people know this about me, but I love this music. I love this genre. I use it, I use it as a utility, that's for sure. But it does relax me, and I do, but I also use it for inspiration. It inspires the work that I do, which doesn't fall within this category. And I love borrowing from this genre and then borrowing from folk and this. So I love what you guys do. I love your label. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat, and congratulations on everything that you guys have done. And I can't wait for our audience to follow along with your story. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much, Scott.